There's always a balance of sort of commercial and artistic aspirations, if you like, but we knew that we wanted to make a film that went out there by itself. We needed to do something that put us firmly on the map and enabled us to be a production company that can make feature films. So there was no two ways about it. We set out to make a film that had a commercial appeal and a wide commercial reach. We got it to a good place, we got it to the step outline, and then we got a writer involved, and that was kind of as far as we got at that point, and we didn't know how we were going to fund the film.
We looked into all the options basically, so that included things like crowdfunding, private investment, and going through like local authority funding methods as well.
We had the basis of a prospectus, and working through the prospectus it was clear we needed to speak to a lawyer, so I was speaking to a lawyer. The lawyer introduced me to a venture capital investor, which was a bigger scheme, and you pay money to enter the network and then you present, but you have to be at a stage where your project is good and ready. And also for venture capital funds, it's a lot more money than the relatively humble amount of money that we were trying to raise.
We really needed somebody who had previous experience of doing this, and that's where Rob Graham, our accountant, came in.
I'm Rob Graham, director of a company called Graham Associates International Limited. At present we specialise in helping films get financed, financially manage them, and making sure that investors in those films are looked after. In doing that you have to have a passion for movies, and that's something we have and enjoy doing.
The first thing you need to do when you're making a film is set up an SPV, which is a special purpose vehicle, which is a ring-fenced company in which you sell equity in your film. This is how you raise your budget, through private investment, and all the rights of that particular production reside there. This is for several reasons, not least that you protect your existing company. So if our production company in this case is Movie Mogul Limited, we set up Altogether Limited in which to make Panic Button through. Had we not, I mean, it just becomes a murky pool, because Movie Mogul has other business interests and other equity shareholders, and if the film was to become a success or a failure for that matter, it would have taken that company with it. As far as I was concerned, an enterprise investment scheme was just this thing that was like complicated, expensive, way off. It can cost you up to £40,000 just to set it up, but what it enabled at the time was a 20% tax relief on investment to private investors. So it's a really nice incentive to get people in there. This year it's actually gone up to 30%, which is fantastic, you know. But you can spend a lot of money in setting up an EIS to make that SPV, EIS qualifying to get the tax relief, but then you still need to go out and find those investors, so it's more expenditure for you. Luckily for us, Rob Graham, the accountant, really liked the film, was really excited, and invested in it in his own way by waiving the cost of his paperwork and accountancy fees for setting up the EIS as much as he possibly could, and he took some equity in the film straight away. So he was one of the first equity investors essentially that came on board with the film.
The investors we were approaching are not necessarily film investors, they were people who invested in all sorts of other businesses. So we made a conscious effort when presenting to them to not focus too heavily on the story. We had to entice them and interest them, but they really wanted to know what our business plan was and how we were going to be able to get them a return on their investment. So that's what we focused on, and we presented it in a way that it seemed like a plausible, realistic, believable thing. We didn't give outlandish figures for returns. We picked films that were a reasonable success based on their budget and of a similar type of film, and targeted them that way.
Know your product and know its unique selling point. Why is your film any different or any more exciting to the next film? You know, so I think that's absolutely key. Secondary to that, it would be know what the investment proposition is. Know how much you're looking for, know what the equity is. And third for that is go sell for all you're worth. You know, you've got to infect that enthusiasm, because it's such a big gamble, it's such a big risk for an investor, and you know, not knowing that you can pull it off, again, if you're first timers, untried and tested, it's your word that you can deliver this. Some investors came to us and said, where's your completion bond? want your completion guarantor, then I'll put my money in. And we're like, okay, so we look into the completion guarantor, and that's a really expensive process and a long-winded process. It would cost more than the investment that the guy was willing to make in the film in the first place. So it was a no-brainer for us that we couldn't do it. And a bit hot under the collar, my kind of response was, you know, my word is my guarantee. I'm sorry, you're investing in me and the company. That's the trust, that's the leap that you're putting into the film. We're not in a position where we can spend £40,000 on securing, you know, a completion guarantor to come in and guarantee that things will get made their way if we cock it up. So some things on a micro budget just aren't viable that are applicable to a low budget or a medium budget feature film.
As a business angel, when I invest, I have to believe that I can make a 10x return on my money. So whatever amount of money I'm investing, I have to believe at some point in the not too distant future, there's an exit that allows me to make 10 times my money. Now I know that in reality, sometimes I will make 3 times my money and sometimes I will lose all of my money. But I have to believe that the 10 times possibility is there. So in a film, because of the tax system, the EIS system, it means my money is locked up for a minimum of 3 years. So at the end of that 3-year period, I'm looking for at least a 3 times return.
Okay, the rates of return on films differ obviously depending on what you've got. I mean, sometimes the gory horror ones will recoup very quickly. If they're a fan-based type of movie with known actors in, that's going to recoup quite quickly. On average, I would expect a film to recoup within 12 to 18 months and then go into profit. Rates of profit I would expect over, say, a 3-year period range from 100 to 150%.
The advantages of a film are there's a budget up front, and if the film can be delivered to that budget, and you would only invest in a film company that you thought could actually deliver the film to that budget, if it is delivered to that budget, you know what equity you're going to get in the final product up front. So that's attractive to an investor, because normally as an angel investor, you're used to having further calls on your money, where a company says, we need a little bit more money to do something. But with the film, the budget's known up front. That's great.
The first advantage is that you would have a known time during which you would recoup the profit from it. I appreciate that films can go on and on and on, but I would think that, you know, the fact that the main bulk of the thing comes back within the period of 3 years, then that would be a distinct advantage. So it's a shorter term investment rather than some other types of industry which may in themselves be a longer term investment.
Well, of course, you can invest in any industries, and many industries can be approved as an enterprise investment scheme. But there are few as exciting as films and the entertainment business, where investors not only will own part of a movie which exists virtually forever, they can also go and visit film sets, meet the cast and crew, attend exciting premieres, and for those who wish, they can appear in front of the camera.
I don't profess to have any expertise over the film world, so I would not want to influence a director, a producer, a writer in any way at all. I think it would be absolutely arrogant and stupid of me to want to do that, and I'd be better keeping my money in my pocket if I thought I was investing and giving any more than my money.
I believe in leaving things to specialists. You know, if you pay somebody who thinks they know what they're doing, or you think they know what they're doing, more importantly, then you should respect their judgment on those matters. I think the only time that I would be particularly perhaps concerned about it would be if I was told that the film was definitely going to be, you know, The Sound of Music, and it turned into Halloween 3. Most people who haven't invested or are investing in their first film or considering it wouldn't know very much at all about the industry or the business, but would know who a specific named actor was. So that if you said, well, I've got Brad Pitt in my film, they would know who you're talking about because they recognise the name.
Horror rarely needs big stars because it's a genre-led type of movie. If you get into other things, certain thrillers, certainly comedies, then you're going to have to start looking at names. because people will aim for that DVD, open their wallet because that person's in it. If they think somebody's funny, they'll buy it. If they're a fan of that particular actor, they want to buy it because they like that person.
Obviously, a marquee name will draw certain audiences, but many of the films that have made the biggest return have no names attached to them whatsoever. So I don't think it's essential for a film to have a marquee name, and perhaps the marquee name will come at an extremely high price. So you've got to look at it. It'll be different for different circumstances. But I think Blair Witch had no names at all to it, and that's the highest return that anybody's ever made out of a film.
We had choices, really. You can go anywhere. You can knock on the doors of the big boys. What concerned us there was we may slot into a slate of 20 films that are going out that year and sit at the bottom of it because it's this micro budget with no big names in it, this little British indie film. So we could do that and then benefit from their big marketing machine, but obviously pay the cost for it, recoupable from any profits the film makes. So there was that. Or we could have looked, which we did do, the boutique type label, which is, luckily we found this guy in Canada who's worked for all the big companies, all the big distribution and sales companies for like 20, 25 years, and now he's set up by himself. So what he had was a black book in his back pocket. He knows how the market works. He's been to every market for the past 10, 15 years, knows the business and loved the film, wanted to take it on. So we just took an absolute stab in the dark based on recommendations and signed a 5-year agreement with a sales agent.
We took it to Cannes and our sales agent came along for that, and he had his own stand where he was representing our film amongst a couple of others that he had there. And basically what it boiled down to us to do is to advertise the film there. So we were running around in panic button t-shirts and dropping flyers around, and we had a screening set up.
The screening itself was fantastic. That's a good experience to get your film shown at Cannes in front of a very hardcore film industry audience. You never know who's coming in.
Well, in Cannes they have like a guidebook which basically lists everyone who's registered, who's attending. So they're broken down into distributors, buyers, and all those people. So producers. So I went through a really big fat book and marker penning down all the companies of people of interest.
Cannes resulted in France, Germany, Turkey and Japan, and ultimately the UK. The UK was a funny one because Alan Jones from Fright Fest was in that screening room that day. We got a text message or an email, I think it was the next day, from Alan saying how much he enjoyed Panic Button and wants to screen it at Fright Fest, and that was a big, big breakthrough for us.
Off the back of Cannes, we had a lot of people there who expressed interest in the film and were making offers all over the place. And the sales agent then kind of picks and chooses the ones that he feels are fair or reasonable offers and tries to. But the process doesn't just happen at Cannes and the deal is done. They go on for months afterwards. So we've got people who've come and gone throughout this time, and now we're at a stage where we've got quite a few different territories interested.
Kind of keep your feet on the ground and make sure that you're getting the best possible deal, and go through all the small print and the complications that arise in the back, and figure it out based on, you know, what other people have done, and speak to other people and see just how good the deals are. So I think ultimately we settled on a company that were less high flyers, glitz and glamour, but they were solid, and they've been doing it for years and years and years and years. And everybody we spoke to had good things to say about them. And yeah, I think we got a really good deal, and they put a minimum guarantee on the table of good money, which we accepted. So when you sign an agreement with a sales agent, they will take your film on for a minimum of 5 years, and you assign the worldwide rights to that seller. So then he can take your film to world markets and sell your film piece by piece to different territories. So for example, within each territory, France, for example, you've got theatrical, you've got DVD, you've got video on demand rights, you've got airlines, and you can either do one blanket deal with that territory, or you can sell it piecemeal, bit by bit. So you'll sell to the broadcasters one set of rights, you'll sell somebody else the DVD and VOD rights for it. It's easiest if you just do it as one package to a bigger buyer from each territory. What they'll do is they'll put a minimum guarantee down. So for example, you might get, for France, you might get, arbitrary number, $80,000. Everything's done in dollars. And that's their minimum guarantee to you, that they know that they can recoup that money after making their distribution spend, and then you go into a profit share with them afterwards.
We knew from the beginning that we were always aiming this as a DVD release. I think in our minds we like to imagine that it would get some theatrical release or a big release, but from a prestige point of view, that's kind of, you know, something that would have been nice, but we knew that that comes with a huge cost for marketing and a big expense to get the film out there on that kind of release if you want enough people to turn up to make you any money. So we knew that theatrical basically would boil down to being an advert for the DVD.
If it's to make a return and to build the business model as we're doing, I think it makes much more sense to go straight to DVD and get good video on demand return and sell to a few territories to help recoup your budget. If it's a more artistic venture, if for example you made a publicly funded film that was less commercially orientated and it was, you know, more of an artistic slant, let's say, then your intentions might be very different, in which case there might be a very strong argument to take it out theatrically first.
Having recently looked at the statistics of eyeballs on films, I've seen that only 11% of viewings of a film are in the cinema. So you've got to recognise that a cinema is not where people view films today. Also, the returns to a producer to a film aren't really that high in most cases for cinema. So whilst 30% is to DVD video market and the balance obviously to television, your cinema is not where the money is.
I don't think it's important at all above the interesting bit of having a premiere in a cinema, which I think all films do anyway. Then no. Again, I would be more impressed by the fact that people had done their research and decided that this was something which should go straight to DVD or should, you know, go straight to perhaps a specific type of television channel in the States or something like that, and they stuck with it. It wouldn't really matter to me whether it was in the cinema or not. To
be honest, theatrical release, unless you're Disney, are not going to work. It's purely as a marketing and PR exercise to get your movie in front of some people. They're going to think, well, yeah, I want it, I saw that at the cinema, I'll go and buy it. But cinemas don't make any money because by the time the cinema chains take 70% and the cost of getting it into those cinemas, it's purely a market exercise. The way money's made is any of the outlets after that. So whether it's going to be online, DVD, Blu-ray, that type of medium.
Take on board other people's opinions. You have to have belief in your project that you can make it happen and that you have got something strong, because you need to convince a lot of people that to part with their money for it or to get involved. But you also need to compromise, so you need to take on board other people's opinions because you're not always going to be right.
Seriously think to somebody starting out to make a film and you want to try and do it all, don't. There's very experienced people out there who can help you and shoulder that responsibility. It's again about building those allies and you know, taking those people with you, getting the creative team that works for that particular project, being truthful to it and making the film together.
If you want to get your film made, you've got to keep a commercial head on. I mean, realistically, you know, if your idea is too far gone for people to grasp, then you know you might have to reconsider things. If you're hugely successful and you've got a track record, then you can get away with a lot more. But at this stage, if you're just starting out, you've got to make sure that your idea suits people's desires, and they'll help you make it happen that way.
So setting out to make your first film, I think the first thing to do, which is key to everybody, set up a special purpose vehicle, an SPV company, to make the film through. Secondary to that, make it EIS qualifying if you want to attract private investment and make it, you know, an interesting, viable proposition to them. And then thirdly, when you're working on your producer's net, profits, keeping the points. It's really key to retain as many points as you possibly can as a producer or production company, because that is ultimately how you're going to make any money at all from the whole process, which may take you 3 years from script to screen.